I'm Tisha Bader, and in the news, the attack this past weekend on a synagogue in Colleyville, Texas, where a man took the rabbi of Congregation Beth Israel, Charlie Cytron-Walker, and 3 of his congregants hostage, holding them at gunpoint for hours while the FBI negotiated to try and resolve the crisis. One hostage was released after a number of hours, and then several hours later, as things appeared to worsen, Rabbi Cytron-Walker saw an opportunity, told the remaining 2 congregants to run for an emergency exit as he threw a chair at the hostage taker and then ran out after the other 2, all 3 getting out alive, thankfully. Well, through the 11-hour ordeal, there were many on the ground, in addition to, of course, law enforcement, fellow clergy, many of whom have worked closely with Rabbi Cytron-Walker for years, who were on hand to offer support and to wait and to pray. Among them, a close friend and colleague of Rabbi Cytron-Walker, Rabbi Andrew Paley, who leads Temple Shalom in Dallas, about half an hour away from Congregation Beth Israel. And he is kind enough to join us here on JBS to talk about that day and about getting to hug his friend again. Rabbi Paley, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you have a lot going on. We appreciate you coming on JBS today.
Glad to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. So take us back, if you will, to Saturday. What was your first thought when you found out this was the congregation of your friend and colleague, and what was happening?
Well, when you hear the news of any community under attack like that, your heart breaks, and it's a sad moment to relive those feelings of terror and fright, wherever it may be. The fact that it was close to home in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and of course, Rabbi Cytron-Walker's congregation and him and his congregants in peril was just amplified so much, and it was terrifying to watch.
I can imagine. I understand you received a phone call for you to come down and offer support from someone in the Department of Homeland Security. Tell us how that happened and what happened.
So later in the day, I received a call and was asked to come and help. I'm a volunteer chaplain with the Dallas Police Department, a rabbi. So I thought maybe that might be of help to the situation, to the families, and to the care team from the FBI in particular that was caring for the families. So I made my way there as soon as I could.
And you first went to an elementary school in the area where there was the staging area where things were set up, or walk me through that a bit.
Yeah, so that was there were a few different areas of where the authorities were using to kind of control the situation. One of them was a school close by. I was able to be there, and if and when any hostages or anything, anyone was in need of some help, they would send them there. So that's where I was.
And then later you went to the Good Shepherd Church. Now, where were you when that first hostage was released?
So I was at the school. They brought that gentleman there. He was quickly reunited with his daughter. He was in good spirits, and they were obviously safe. Glad that he was safe and secure. And to see a friendly face and amongst all the chaos, I hope was of comfort, of course. So that he had been released shortly after I arrived.
Did you get a chance to speak with him at all, or what was your?
Yeah, briefly. Again, he seemed in good spirits and had an opportunity to chat with him, and glad again that we had a few moments together.
That's remarkable to be in good, relatively good spirits after undergoing such trauma. When you got to the Good Shepherd, what was the atmosphere there like? I know there was a lot of time just waiting, not knowing. Can you explain, can you give us an idea of what that
Sure.
atmosphere felt like?
So the church, and we have to especially thank them and their leadership and their clergy for opening their doors and welcoming the community as they did. It was kind of a gathering place for the media, for people of concern, families were there. Other pastors and ministers, faith leaders also gathered there. So there's a lot of activity in that place. And you're right, a lot of sort of hurry up and waiting for something to happen. And if it was all meaningful in any way, to avail ourselves of help if the authorities needed it. I know at one point, I wasn't there at that time, but at one point there was actually a prayer vigil and there's a gathering, and all of that matters. And I think for me, one of the powerful images and powerful moments was to see all of those people who showed up and to be there and were there for hours and hours and hours, just sitting there and demonstrating both to the families who were concerned, but also to the wider community that when communities are in peril, we show up. That's what we do in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and it was really moving and very powerful.
And I want to get back to that. And you're speaking about leaders and people from different faiths across the community who showed up.
Right. Yeah.
And
exactly. Yeah. And this is a testament in large part to Rabbi Cytron-Walker, who developed these relationships, who nurtured them over the course of his career, and who made that in many ways the hallmark of his career, to be a bridge builder and a consensus maker. And so when there was a need and he was in need, people showed up. Of course they would. He would do the same for others.
And many people are speaking about his demeanor throughout this ordeal, how he was able to maintain this sense of calm, which is incredible.
Right.
I heard him saying, well, we're trained to do this as clergy, as rabbis, but I think you also have to be a really unique person, because all the training in the world, when push comes to shove and you are, God forbid, in this situation, I think, and you know him personally, this has to come from somewhere within a person.
Absolutely, 100%. And I think that he would demur at any other accolade about this, but it says something really remarkable about him, that he was able to sort of keep calm and continue to pastor to his congregants and attend to their needs. He was consistently praised by the authorities for the manner by which he handled himself throughout the day, and the fact that he was able to secure the safety of himself and others. Just incredible. You never know, of course, how you would react in a situation, regardless of how much training. So the fact that with training and who he was and what he was all about, was able to do that is just absolutely remarkable.
It really is. It's astonishing. And thank goodness things ended the way they did.
Sure.
Talk about the training for a bit. I know you yourself have undergone some of these courses, which Rabbi Cytron-Walker was very clear and expressed his gratitude at having these training courses, whether it be with the FBI, with local police, with the Anti-Defamation League, with secure community networks. Right. It was important to him to acknowledge and give credit to that training. What training have you done, and what can you sort of give us an idea of how that goes, of what's involved?
So he's absolutely correct. The resources available for communities of faith and others, other institutions, to go through a kind of a checklist of opportunities for doing whatever is possible to make yourself and others, your institution, as safe and secure as possible. We're so grateful that they are out there, and all those that you've named and others offer those training opportunities. So, those come in kind of layers of safety protocols that faith leaders and communities deploy to make sure that they're as safe and secure as possible. There's a lot, of course, that goes into it, and every community is a little bit different, but having that is a necessity. I mean, we want to make sure, and not just, of course, in the extreme cases of active shooters or hostage, but in case of, fire or natural disasters or something like that, knowing what to do and where to go, and to train on that, and to feel comfortable and confident in your ability to execute that in the moment is absolutely key.
And that's something you touch upon, is that sort of practice element of anything, like,
Right,
right?
yeah,
When
of
we
course.
practice something, it sort of gets into our body, it gets into our physicality, and it's easier to then react under situations that are
Sure.
like this,
Yeah, and
God forbid.
right,
But
of course. And look, the truth is that the balancing act between being a welcoming and inviting institution and having these layers of safety and security is a very delicate balance to make. But I know myself and others, we would always want to err on the side of safety and security, even if some of those processes might be a little bit, awkward or cumbersome or off-putting. Safety is number one. So, but you're right, making sure that everybody knows and everybody feels comfortable and if called upon could execute the plan appropriately, the key to making sure everyone's safe.
and you bring up a really good point about finding that delicate balance, which I think has to be really tricky.
Sure.
Especially as a spiritual leader, as a community leader, you want to impart to your congregation the positive messages you're giving them. You want to be a welcoming community gathering place.
Right.
That's what a synagogue is in many ways. So how do you find that balance between being prepared, knowing that something could happen in the back of your mind, keeping that awareness, but at the same time, being welcoming,
Sure.
being warm? How do you find that for yourself and your congregation?
That is the key question, and that is the difficulty that we experience. And we all know in the Jewish community that we carry this burden of worry about safety and security with us. Deborah Lipstadt, once said that, when you go into an institution, and I'm paraphrasing here, when you go into a Jewish institution, it's nice to be in there and you're welcome and so on, but you also keep an eye out, where's the exit? And so this is a worry that we wear with some level of discomfort, but it's a burden that we carry. So in opening our doors, we have a sense of welcome, right? I hear in the Passover, in the Seder, let all who are hungry come in and eat, right? So we welcome in those who are in need. And at the same time, we have to be careful that there might be an element of danger. Sometimes we get it right. I like to think most of the time we do. But I'm sure there's some times where it's, again, difficult or awkward or uncomfortable, but we want to err on the side of safety and security, not just for that person, but, for the facility, for all those involved. And it's an ongoing test of, what the situation is, what's happening in the moment, what our process and procedures are. So it's a balance. And I like to think, again, we get it right, and we keep everybody as safe as we can.
So let's go back to Saturday. Again, you're in the church, you're waiting, the time is going by, and suddenly, how did you find out that Rabbi Cytron-Walker and the other two remaining hostages had fled the scene and were out?
So there were a number of law enforcement personnel in the church at that time, and they notified us that something was happening. Excuse me. And really shortly thereafter, that the hostages had been secured and the situation was over. And in the moment of hearing that there was the operation was unfolding is a gut-wrenching moment, because there's so many things that could go wrong. The personnel involved could get injured, you name it. And so feeling, oy gevald, something, is happening. And then shortly thereafter, this euphoria of that they're safe and it's over and this terrible ordeal is complete is really, a wonderful end to a roller coaster day, of course. But it was hard. It was really all those emotions sort of rushing to the fore.
I can only imagine what was some of the things you were hearing around you or seeing when that announcement was made that they were out and they were safe?
Yeah, high-fiving, hugging, and kissing, and wanting to, in some way, to convey our relief and our happiness to the families and ultimately to those who were released. There was a profound sense of gratitude to the law enforcement personnel, and there were hundreds and hundreds of them working throughout the day and continued actually throughout the night to provide that level of safety and security, and the manner by which they handled themselves, the professionalism, the skill, the way that they went about making sure that we were safe. It's just unbelievable. We owe them an incredible debt of gratitude and thanks. And not just, by the way, not just in this moment and in the aftermath, but really in the every day in between, because they do this for us day in and day out. And it's really, really amazing.
Absolutely. Tell us about that moment when you saw your colleague and friend walk in the door.
So I arrived back at the school shortly after Rabbi Cytron-Walker had arrived, and he was making his way to the room where they were going to speak with some of the authorities about what happened. And I kind of cut in front of everybody just to give him a hug and let him know, on behalf of everybody who wanted to give him a hug, we're so glad he's safe, and to know that he was loved and cared about. And so relieved that he was okay. So it was very brief, but I was fortunate to be able to do that.
And how did he seem to you? I know it was a brief moment.
Yeah. Well, we had, I thought a kind of a funny moment. He looked at me. It took him a second to, place the face, in the context, of course. And he, was like, "What are you doing here?" And this is where the action is. So I'm glad to have been there. So it was a real honor and blessing to be able to be there in that moment.
For sure. I'm so glad you were able to be there and to catch him for that second. And you mentioned sort of a funny moment there was an interfaith gathering, a service held, I believe it was Monday night on Martin Luther King Day at Whitechapel nearby also. I'm not sure if you were there.
I was not, yeah.
Okay. But in his remarks, the rabbi, he made a couple, not jokes, but there were moments of levity. There were moments where he laughed, and there were moments when you could tell he was overcome and just overwhelmed with emotion. But seeing that he could laugh and smile and joke about something was really also such a lovely thing, because you want to believe that a person, obviously this has been traumatic, and there will be time that needs to pass for healing. But at least you sort of got a sense like, okay, he's intact, this is a human being who went through something horrible, but his sense of humor, his humanity, his whatever his soul, his neshama is, it was there.
Right, of course, yeah. And I saw brief clips of his comments, and he's a good guy. He's a mensch, and I know that this will sort of take some time to process and so on. But I think I'm hopeful, of course, that the optic of all those people who were there, and knowing that there were thousands more who were watching online, along with all those people who were on site at that day, that optic provides a powerful buoy of uplift for him and his family. And more than anything else, to know deep in his heart that he's not alone. That he will have to sort of go through this process by himself with his family and so on. But there's a whole city, if not indeed a whole Jewish people and beyond, that really genuinely care and did their very best to show up. I've been saying this a lot over the past few days. One of my teachers liked to say that you can pretend to care, right? That's kind of easy to do, but you cannot pretend to show up, right? You either do or you don't. And the Dallas-Fort Worth community and beyond they showed up. And I hope that will continue to be an uplift for him, to help him through these difficult times, and allow that shine that is in his neshama to come out, and to allow him to kind of regain who he is and what he's all about.
And you talk about optics, and I think something that you said, seeing the people who showed up, some 1,000 people I think were at that service, thousands of others online, people who have been expressing their support and their solidarity from all faiths. The optics of that really is what I feel we need to have in the forefront. Unfortunately, yes, we have to mention that this incident happened and this was one person's action, but there are so many more people, the majority, this huge amount of outpouring, hopefully will be what comes out of this more than anything else. And I know that the work that he does, as you mentioned, the interfaith work for Jewish-Christian relations, for Jewish-Muslim relations, I know you're involved with your community and in other similar endeavors as well, that does not get diminished in any way. If anything, that it grows even more in the face of something like this happening. Yeah,
I totally agree. I think that will be amplified in the days and years ahead. It's, developing and nurturing relationships is a long-term investment that takes lots of time and energy. And I skew and default to the optimist. So I believe that it's possible. And that's the image that we want to put out there. Faith communities of all kinds want to amplify their messages of love, of hope, of possibility, of shalom, of righteousness and justice. And we want to stand with and form alliances and collaborations with those who feel that same way. And the more we do that, the stronger that we develop those relationships, then the smaller the space becomes for that evil stuff to happen. And ultimately, we're not in a redeemed world yet, but by Yom Hahu, one day, we'll get there. And again, as the difficulty of that journey, right, is that the burden that we carry with all this worry and anxiety and all these processes and procedures and so on, if that's the cost of getting to a moment of redemption where evil and all this hatred and violence is no longer, then that's a burden that we will carry. And I, for one, believe it's possible. And with these communities and these amazing, dedicated faith leaders of all the different communities here, I just think it's possible.
I want to quote something you said when you spoke about the work that you do and the work Rabbi Cytron-Walker does. You said, we're not going to be deterred in doing the things that we do. Community leaders, faith community leaders that stand up for peace and justice and love, we're going to do that. We're not going to be scared into not doing what we do, just the opposite, until such time that we don't have to worry about security measures.
Look, I believe that. And I think, as you alluded to just a little bit ago, I think this provides us an opportunity to redouble our efforts and to take a deep breath and to be reminded ourselves so that we can remind others that, to be a light unto the nations and to provide a way forward through the darkness is the call and the mandate of the Jewish people. And it's not an easy task. It's not an easy journey, but we do this with great love and with great care, knowing, in fact, that it is possible. And I'm hopeful that this will allow us to take a big step forward.
I hope so as well, Rabbi Andrew Paley. Thank you so much for taking time. I know you have a lot to do and people to speak with and things that you're dealing with at the moment. So we appreciate it. And please convey from the JBS community our deepest support for Rabbi Cytron-Walker, for the entire community there in Texas. We really send you our very, very best. And again, are incredibly grateful that this crisis ended as it did.
Yes, thank you so much. Will do.
Thank you so much.
Great.
Rabbi Andrew Paley leads Temple Shalom in Dallas, Texas, and we thank him so very much for joining us here on JBS. And thank you, as always, to our director, Sloan Copeland, managing director, Dara Golub, our transmissions manager, Michael Paley, technical manager, John McDevitt, and our producer, Carol Lilienthal. And thank you for watching In the News. I'm Tisha Bader. Be well.